Hey everyone, it's the host of All Across America, Marco Vig, jumping in for a few seconds before the show to thank y'all for listening, to let you know that I want to hear from you. Tell me what you like about the show, and send me your suggestions too. Follow us on Instagram at AllXAmerica, or visit the website, allacrossamerica.net, and you can use our contact page there. If you want to support us, we're on Patreon at patreon.com/allacrossamerica. Try to respond personally to everyone who reaches out, so say hello. All right, on with the show. Podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, from Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam, this is All Across America. Maybe you could start us off with a 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
All right. that was the slow jam. 1, 2, 3.
There we go.
Well, I saw Borderlands, and I was thinking, okay, so you're a DJ, you're a businesswoman, baby DJ school, you're a playwright and writing musicals, and you've done an opera now, which you've just released, and we'll get into all that. But like, what is it about your background, do you think, that made you do all these things?
Well, my mom is a musician. And
you're a second generation DJ.
Well, she could DJ if she wanted to.
Right.
She's good with cables and stuff. And, when I was younger, when I first started like playing in bands and stuff, like I used her amp and her 1/4-inch cable.
So cool.
Yeah. And then as things progressed, I started to have, getting my own equipment, but she kept them in our house. So it was in these slouchy leather bags inside of a wicker basket. It was very not dude.
Right.
It was
wicker basket.
Yeah.
Right.
Just so it looked good with the plants and everything.
Right.
So that's how I kind of got interested in the tech stuff. I made a friend when I was in Orlando still, before I moved to New York.
Yeah.
Travis Stewart.
Okay.
And he gave me an SP202, which is a sampler.
Okay.
And that was kind of my first. And then I got the 303 and the 404 and the 404SX. So it just
and who makes that again?
Boss.
Okay.
The 202 is doesn't come out anymore.
Right.
But I'm working on Camp Wanatachi, one of my musicals.
Right.
We're working on pitching it as a feature film.
Wow.
And since we're setting it now in the 90s.
Okay.
So. Which
is super retro cool now.
It's 1999. So we're getting the fans of the early aughts.
Right.
But that's also when I was at camp having these experiences.
Fair enough, yeah.
I had an autobiographical musical produced, Camp Wanatachi. And when I did the play, it wasn't set in the 90s.
It wasn't.
It was just kind
modern.
of, we didn't say.
Yeah.
So I had my SP404 I would walk around with and play during the show.
That. Yeah.
But then I was like, this has to be 90s. So luckily, the Boss 202 came out in 98.
Aha. So it's
the quirky character can still use it truthfully in the movie.
It's technically correct.
I mean, yeah. For a woman to be using that at camp, like a sampler at camp, that just came out in the 90s, she'd have to be a really special lady. That's not what I was doing in the 90s.
Yeah. But you know what? I think we can all suspend our disbelief for that. And nobody's going to know. No, except some audio.
Yeah,
nerd.
The heads will be like, that's time realistic.
Yeah, that was real. That was doing it for real. That was real sampling. That was what did you capture? Because it wasn't we're recording this in GarageBand and it's super easy to do.
So I was sampling, when I first started, I was mostly sampling me making rhythms by being like, and it took me a really long time before I figured out how to sync the BPMs.
Right, okay.
So I would have to turn one off when it started to get off and turn it back on. and I just did it like that for a long time until I started to like how it sounded when one thing was at one rhythm and then the other samples on a different rhythm.
Right.
They don't lock up. And then it's kind of feels like a waterfall.
Yes.
So I think that's, but even when I was just doing my band, Unicornucopia, people kept saying two things. You seem like you're talking to kids. And I'm writing about I'm saying bad words. I'm talking about oral sex. And they're like, yeah, it just looks like when you sing to the audience, you're singing to kids. And I was like, that's not what I want. And then they'd be like, God, it just seems like a musical. And so I essentially failed the role of like indie rock person.
Right.
I was like, nope,
Interesting.
I've gotten enough news because I tried for a couple years and I got good gigs I still have on my bio.
Yeah.
But so then I was like, well, everybody says it's a musical, you know, and I'd written and produced 2 musicals when I was in Orlando at the Fringe Festival.
Right. Okay.
So then, you know, I just put more time into it. But my mom, she was primarily a pianist, but she didn't ever have enough time to work on her stuff. She's the mother of 4 children, and she was involved.
Possible.
So she told me often, if you really want to be a musician, don't have children. And to this day, I just turned 40 and I do not have any children. And I'm a professional musician.
Oh, you got two little dogs running around. So
I know. It's a weird thing that I work with children, but I don't have any. So.
I mean, look at Adele. She took so much time off, and understandably.
Yeah. So, you know, just for the record, it's Borderland.
Borderland. Did I say Borderlands?
Everybody wants to say that.
I'm thinking of a book maybe that was written.
There's a book. There's a video game. My husband, who has heard me say it 1,000 times, still calls it Borderlands.
Make me feel so bad.
I can't believe you watched it. You watched the whole thing?
Of course I did. Yes.
That's so flattering. I really
great.
appreciate it. I can't wait to hear what you think.
So Ida C. Craddock. First of all, I thought, where did you find her? Because I didn't know anything about anything, and I was like, okay, this is a made up person, and she seems like a made up person. It's like it doesn't make sense that this person was actually real and actually existed in the 1890s. It's just like, where did you?
Yeah, Ida C. Craddock. And it sounds so much like idiosyncratic.
Right.
Which is just a blessing
they
from
had interesting names back then.
There was a book that came out and got some coverage on like Radio Lab and NPR stuff. And they were like, this guy at Princeton did a biography of her. Okay. And it's the only real biography of her that exists. And somebody was talking to me. They wanted to collaborate on a musical with me. Right. And they're like, okay, I have these different ideas. And one of them was doing something about Ida Craddock. Wow. And it's like, okay, there's sex, there's spirituality, and there's suicide. Wow. Which are 3 things that resonate with me. Okay. And we're all in my last musical too. And so I first got into researching it, and I spent so much time fascinated learning about the history and the laws at the time and her allies and her enemies that I didn't spend enough time working on the actual music. I had a fellowship with the Brooklyn Philharmonic, which is like a whole chamber orchestra. I'd never written notated music before. Right. But they're like, we bet that you can figure it out in a year and have them play something. So I was like, okay, I'll have them play this thing from Borderland. So the first time I did it, it was supposed to be a string quartet. Okay. And they didn't let me put it up.
Why not?
Because they didn't think it was ready. Okay. And that was like humiliating beyond like I was on the program, I was in the videos, and it was the guy thought it was so bad. Really? I mean, he said it wasn't the piece itself. It was more like what happened is one of the actors went to the wrong place for the dress rehearsal. Okay. He went to the theater instead of to the rehearsal spot. And he's like, well, if we can't do it, he has like a motto, like if it doesn't happen in dress rehearsal, it's not happening. Oh. Plus I had 2 jazz guys come in, and they were doing improvisational stuff. Right. Which wasn't on the wasn't notated. Okay. And I don't think I communicated that clearly with the gentleman. Right. So, but then after that failure, I just was like, my whole life, I feel like I've been failing and then overcompensating in response to that failure to show everybody I'm not like a loser, you know?
It's maybe it's a good way to go it's worked for you.
But Ida's the same way. Okay. She was the first woman to be accepted to University of Pennsylvania. Right. She passed the exams, and then they changed their mind. Wow. And it doesn't say anywhere why they changed her mind. Right. But she was like studying Alaskan phallic symbols and all this stuff, and I don't think she was their poster girl. No. Yeah. So she worked so hard to be taken seriously and to achieve, notoriety, to spread her message.
Right.
After that. And so I always, related to having I have a couple things like that, like 2 or 3 things that just like have motivated me so much, because I was like, that's not happening again. So then the next assignment when I had this residency was to do a piece for chamber orchestra, which is like, 5 first violins, 4 second violins,
right.
and like all this stuff, really, really big. And I just stopped the rest of my life and did it.
Wow.
And my boyfriend would just bring me food and pot, and I just, and I did it, and that, it was recorded.
Yeah.
And that recording of the title song, Borderland,
yeah.
is what I use as my calling card to this day. Turned out really well, and it turned out so well that gentleman, Alan Pearson, who was running the program at the time, was extremely complimentary and has been a mentor to me and helped me with my career ever since.
Wow. And he was the one that had made that suggestion that said maybe it's not ready for prime time.
Yeah. Wow. Not a suggestion. It was like his decision.
Yeah.
I would have been like, get it up there. But so just recently, when I decided I'm going to do this bigger version of it,
right.
not just one song, I said to him, do you have any ideas for music directors? And he hooked me up with like the best music directors in New York.
Wow.
And that was one of the scariest things getting ready for Borderland. It's like, can't I just work with anybody like a little more entry level? Because all the people who were helping me are like,
I mean, that's a good sign, though, don't you
think? It's a great sign. It's just a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
It's scarier.
Yeah.
The string quartet I ended up working with for Borderland, they were just really, 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 really good.
Yeah.
And I was just like shaking in our first rehearsal.
How many musicians were there up on stage with you?
Yes. It was string quartet, so that's 4.
Right.
The gentleman on the electronics and synthesizers,
right.
5. And the percussionist, 6.
Okay.
And then 10 vocalists.
10 vocalists, right. Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking, including you, 17 people on stage.
Oh, including me, it was 16.
16, okay.
Yeah. And, I just was like, what's the hardest thing I can do? and so, like, the basis of it was a string quartet that I failed at before,
right,
with the same piece.
Right.
And I started working again with the man who mentored me during my Brooklyn Philharmonic residency.
Yeah.
So the guy who ran it, Alan Pearson, is the most wonderful, brilliant dude.
Yeah.
And he has a band, Alarm Will Sound, that's like changed the world.
Yeah. And he's based in New York?
Yeah, he's based in New York.
Yeah.
But like on a more regular basis, I worked with Randall Wolf, who's a great composer. He did the score for American Psycho with John Cale.
Wow. Okay.
He did all the orchestral stuff. And he's written operas, and he's written, or like I think, maybe not opera, dance stuff. He's just lived his whole life as a professional composer. He has his PhD from Harvard in composition.
Yeah.
And he was teaching me like what a treble clef is. You know what I mean? And so I started working with him again.
Yeah.
To prepare for this. And our like weekly meetings on Zoom, when he would talk to me about what I've written, it's just, I couldn't have been having more fun.
Wow.
It was just like, shit, do I need to go to like music school or something? Because I love this.
Wow.
But I think one of the reasons I loved it so much is because it just seemed like magic.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go to music school.
That's true. Yeah. I think that says a lot that you've done it without having gone to school. And I mean, there's so many music school grads. There are more music school grads than there are kids graduating to law school these days.
Right. And acting school. I mean, I got my degree in theater.
Okay.
And as soon as I got to New York, it became very clear that I did not have the disposition for the actor's hustle in New York, which is just, you have to be really skinny, you have to be gorgeous, and you have to audition all the time and be okay when people constantly tell you no.
Yeah.
And spend most of your life not, I mean, for the most part, not in stuff.
Yeah.
Unless you do really, really great.
Right.
And then you get to do like a couple cool projects a year, and the rest of your year you're, making whatever.
Independent
Yeah.
films
And I think
scrambling for work. And,
that would have been the category I was in.
Yeah.
Because I didn't I just who I am, how I look, how I act.
Yeah.
It's just more, I think, idiosyncratic.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God, if I write a musical for myself, I can star in every single one.
That's right. You're the boss.
Yeah. And
you're the producer. You're the costume designer.
Exactly.
The picking out all the parts. And
and notating the music. And Camp Wanatachi started with me doing like so many roles, not the notation. A gentleman, Conrad Winslow, did it at that time.
Yeah.
But then as the play got produced again and again and again, I stopped having to make costumes. I stopped having to run the social media.
Yeah.
Like it got to a point where it was its own engine.
Yeah.
And to go back to this, where I'm like the one running to Kinko's and, everything is like, it was humbling, but it was just really, really fun.
Yeah. Do you? So what's the next steps? I mean, you put this on. You did it at Roulette in Brooklyn. Was it Roulette's on Atlantic Avenue?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been there before. I saw a couple. They've done free jazz festivals over the years, but it's been a while. But and they were they in the city at one point or here? I can't remember.
They were in the city since like the 70s. They're like iconic experimental music group. Venue.
Well, I mean, Knitting Factory moved too. Knitting Factory was in Tribeca
and when
forever.
it moved, it just died.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a second. Is it still open?
I don't know.
On Metropolitan?
I used to go all the time in Tribeca. That was
that's
a great spot.
Same. And I would see cool bands there. And then when it came to Williamsburg, I was
I went once, and I don't remember it. It was a weird setup. It was like one of those rooms where it's wider than it is long.
Right.
And I feel like that doesn't work. You want a place that's more narrow.
Yes.
And I don't know. I mean, that was just my perception at the time. But.
Yeah, it's you have to be really clever with venues, otherwise it feels like it can never be full.
True. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's the old it's the Mets and the Yankees. The Mets' new stadium is 10,000 less seats. Wow. Yeah, it went from 55 Shea to Citi Field, 55 to 45, and I think it's for that very reason. They're like, all right, we're the Mets, we're not the Yankees, and we're never going to attract the same amount of people. So let's reduce the capacity to make it look more full, and it works.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, at Borderland, I was like, I told myself and I told my therapist, all I need to do is write the music. If the music is complete and nobody is in costumes and there's no audience members, nobody comes to see it, I will have still succeeded.
Yeah.
Because my goal is just to give myself a deadline so that I complete the music.
Yeah.
But I said that, but like obviously I want to sell out. So right before we opened, I was like, nix that row of chairs. So we cut a row of chairs. So we had more. We officially sold out.
That's great.
And then, but we had overflow room in the balcony.
Oh wow!
Because I just wanted it to feel,
of course,
exciting. Yeah. And so I get
it's
that.
It's a perfect venue. It's got a great stage, and
it was working with Roulette was such a joy.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah.
Such a joy. I mean, stuff that is so odd to every other theater I work with is just like their bread and butter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I remember when they asked, they're like, do you have any kind of script that we could look at? Like inferring that I could do all this without a script.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
it could just all be improvisational.
Yeah.
And they were so kind. And the people, they assigned me an audio engineer and a lighting engineer.
Wow.
And they were both which is a big reason I chose to go there.
Right.
There's such a labor shortage.
Right.
I couldn't find anybody. This is another thing. So many people didn't write me back about like doing live audio that the only guy two people wrote me back of the, at least 30 emails I sent out.
Wow.
And one was a guy who was too expensive for me.
Yeah. And
the other guy was the guy who ran the sound the first time ever that the Metropolitan Opera used microphones.
Oh my God.
For Dr. Atomic by John Adams.
Okay.
And he's like, I can't do it, but I feel for you. And it's the people who are higher up, like, feel for me where I am at my level, and then they'll help me where people my age are like,
nah.
Yeah. And it was the same. The guy who did the poster does all the posters for Lincoln Center.
Wow.
And I was like, I have $500, which is just such a joke in comparison to what he gets paid for the other stuff. His wife did the Hamilton
Oh my goodness!
logo, which is like so iconic.
Yeah.
And he just felt for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I think the concept of Borderland, if you don't know, which is it's about Ida C. Craddock, who was a real life 19th century sexologist who claimed to be married to an angel.
And she was a priestess, a belly dancing advocate, women's rights advocate, author.
Yeah.
I mean, she was like a Renaissance
Yeah,
lady.
she did so much more than sexology. I mean,
Yeah.
I could have said a new opera about an American mystic and the angel she loved.
Right.
I could have said, about she was one of the first people to bring yoga to America.
Yes.
So if you look at her obituary in the New York Times,
right.
they put as the headline, High Priestess of Yoga takes her own life.
Wow, High Priestess of Yoga.
That's what she called herself.
Wow.
And it's like now there's yoga at churches.
I know
there's yoga.
There's
in the
like
yard.
chair yoga for elderly folks.
I know.
It is
and
the most.
She was just
right.
so ahead of her time.
Oh my goodness!
In every way.
Yeah.
But she couldn't. She couldn't do it without having a husband, because she knew so much about sex. And it's, how do you know this? And her husband was a spirit. You know.
What was his name?
Soph.
Soph.
It could be Soph, but I call it Soph. It sounds more like soft.
I like Soph. Yeah.
Soph.
Yeah. Now the scandalous part for her was that I read it. I didn't read her biography, but I read the Wikipedia page.
Right.
And, they had pieces in her biography, and I guess her biographer discovered that she may have had 2 lovers.
Right.
2 actual human being lovers and not an angel Soph.
So the question is, number one, is she lying? And
right.
Because she can't tell you she's like a free woman who has sex as she pleases. That couldn't work.
Right.
And then, or she was crazy.
Right.
Or there really was a spirit there.
Yeah.
And we chose in the play to do it, to have it be like a real spirit. But the gentleman who did the most research on her before the biographer, his opinion of her, it just was like the same as the psychiatrist she went to. She's a monomaniac, meaning she's completely focused on sex, nymphomaniac, and she clearly, it couldn't have been an angel because angels don't exist. And just, so he wanted to write about her and see her writings. And she sent her writings away when she died to William T. Stead in England. Okay. She sent them to him, and he couldn't get to them. And it was like kind of good because he already had like a negative slant against her. But William T. Stead died on the Titanic.
Oh my God.
And he was such a spiritualist. So like for a spiritualist to die on the Titanic, like the most iconically haunted death situation.
Pretty much.
But when he died, he wasn't there to protect Ida's work. This guy got into it, and he wrote this kind of stuff. Oh, she had lovers, she was lying.
Right. She, she had, we don't know. But she had a lot of conflict. I mean, she was perfect for the stage because, she's got this angel, so she's got the love interest, who is a mystical love interest, but then she's got the conflict with her mom, and then with what was it?
Comstock,
Anthony, who is this ridiculously evil character, and the conflict, the external conflict with society. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and I'm realizing that now as I work on making Camp Wanatachi a film. Multiple external conflicts and internal conflicts.
Right.
Just kind of keep it buzzing.
Right.
So her enemy was Anthony Comstock. He was the president of the Society for the Suppression of Vice.
Oh my God.
He created...
Fun. Sounds like a fun guy.
I know. He created the Comstock laws, which are still in effect.
Really?
And it said you can't mail anything lewd, lascivious, or obscene through the mail.
Right.
And now what we've got going on with people out of state sending abortion pills to a state where it is legal, that could very easily
violate this Comstock.
the Comstock law that's still on the books.
Wow. And I mean, the crazy thing is he was using this law, this statute against Ida named after himself. It just seems like so over the top ridiculous. I mean, it just seemed like he had this clearly a vendetta against her. She was like enemy number one.
And guess who became enemy number one when she died? Margaret Sanger.
Wow.
If you look through all her stuff, he's like just as much enemy number one.
Wow. Tell us about Margaret Sanger.
Margaret Sanger started the Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
And she, is super controversial now because some of her beliefs had to do with
eugenics.
Yeah, eugenics.
Okay.
But the truth is, I don't think there's been a human being who's changed the world and humanity more than her. Because giving us the choice of whether we're going to get pregnant or not has everything to do with migration and the economy and crops. And she did so much. So I don't think she could have existed without the work of Ida.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that's why the opening number in Borderland is called No Gods, No Masters.
Right.
Which went on to be Margaret Sanger's catchphrase. And the quote she put on the top of all of her zines.
Right.
They didn't call them zines then, but essentially that's what it was. And so if I do the full version, this was a truncated version.
Really?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I mean, it was what, an hour 45?
Yeah, an hour and 36.
Okay.
And yeah, and that was truncated. I mean,
operas are what, 3-4 hours, 6 hours?
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly. And Hamilton was like 2.5 hours.
Okay, yeah.
And so, I just kind of wanted to do something big, larger scale than I'd ever done, and more mature work than I'd done before.
Right.
And really, so important to me was forgive me, you're a man, and you're so wonderful. And you're a great example of a man, Mark. Mark is a great guy, husband and father. But I didn't want any man to get any credit for one note, anything.
Wow.
I wanted it to be like Natalie wrote every stroke of a rest of anything. Because when you see something like that, it's very hard to believe that the person who's singing it and performing it also wrote all the notes and wrote all the lyrics and wrote the book. And I'm not just trying to impress myself. I want to impress the world. I'm still compensating for being kicked out of my first college. Yeah. Which I was. North Carolina School of the Arts.
Where's that?
It's in North Carolina. It, at the time, was one of the best acting schools, up with Juilliard.
What city in North Carolina?
Winston-Salem.
Oh, Winston-Salem. Okay. I went to Appalachian State in Boone.
Oh,
cool. So, yeah, just up the mountain from there. So,
yeah.
I haven't spent much time in Winston-Salem, but I've been through.
Yeah, so they had a cut system. They would, bring in something like 12 actors, and they would graduate 7.
Oh, wow. So it was, vicious.
And I was cut the first year because they didn't think I was emotionally mature enough for the program.
Really? Okay.
And
how old were you at the time?
18. And it was my first time away from my super, super strict conservative family. And I had to remember to take my own psych meds. My mother, or it was my father, gave them to me every day. Right. And so then now I'm supposed to do
hundreds of miles away from home.
And I just I would forget to take my medicine or it's just kids stuff. And, it was really hard. And
every 18-year-old's a knucklehead in their own way.
But with this thing, they just got I don't want to say the best of the best. I want to say the most disciplined of the most disciplined.
I see, yeah.
And so if you come out of that school, it means something. If you look, anybody who went there, it's on their bio. It's or on their Instagram page.
Sure.
It's very important to mention.
Yeah.
And so on the stage for Borderland, I was flanked by 2 people who graduated from North Carolina School of the Arts, my mom and Bill. And they know I was cut. Yeah. And they still wanted to be in my show. Right. They both had smaller parts than me. And they were both so, everybody in it was so respectful. And it's more about, I think, tenacity than pedigree.
Yep. Of course it is. Certainly there's talent in tenacity. Pedigree, What does that mean, particularly these days? Unless you're a dog.
Unless you're a dog. Well, I was just reading this thing in the New York Times, like the long-lasting appeal of the self-taught artist.
Right.
And they were talking about that in terms of visual art.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that there's some sort of appeal like that. I mean, obviously, when Alan Pearson was running the Brooklyn Philharmonic, he thought it was something special.
Right. Yeah.
So, and that program was called the Outside In Fellowship.
Wow.
Bring the outside people in.
Nice.
And I never would have thought of composing for an orchestra.
Right. But
they're like, you should. We've heard your other
Well, that's
music.
exactly what the kind of blood that, orchestral music needs. It's not people that have, grown up in the conservatory world and can bring some sort of, outsider, different take on it to have a fresh perspective. So, and maybe in that way you're the perfect person.
Yeah, I hope so. There's this woman, Beth Morrison, who is just about as cool as you can be.
Yeah.
And she is a big engine behind new operas.
Right. Okay.
And is into hybrid stuff, into experimental stuff. And I went to see at National Sawdust, which is another great experimental music venue.
I know
in
of it.
Williamsburg.
Okay.
It was essentially like a battle. One woman did like 30 minutes of her opera, partially staged, just like Borderland was at Roulette. And the other woman did it. And it was like, at the end of watching them, she's going to vote.
Wow.
And the one that she likes more, gets to go be fully produced.
Oh, my God. The pressure.
I know. And her alumni who've done her groups have gone on to, have their stuff at the Met and get, all this big stuff. So I'm there, and I would love to work with her someday.
Yeah.
And then she just keeps saying, we just try to get young artists and get their voices up there. I'm like, young? I'm 40 now. I'm not young anymore.
You're young in the opera world.
We're trying to get them right out of conservatory. I didn't go to conservatory.
Yeah.
So as you and I were saying the other day, I was telling you, I'm like, I'm not putting anything that can tell them how old I am.
Yeah.
And
I mean, in the opera world, you're very, very young. I mean, we're not, we're not talking a
I
SoundCloud rap
that.
scene over here. In the opera world, you're a baby. I mean, 40 is.
Oh, that's a great thing to say, Mark. Thank you. I appreciate that. I like being older because I have, more money to put on my own work, and I've learned more things. So there's lots of reasons to like being older, but just hearing that was a little bit of like, eh? And Meryl Streep has this really cool thing, a competition for screenwriters over 40.
Wow.
Screenwriting women over 40.
Wow. Good for her. That's cool.
I know.
Something different. Yeah. That is very cool. So what's the next step? And, so you did Camp Wanatachi. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that you did a couple of different productions of that, right?
I mean, there's a particular path to
Right, that's
Broadway.
what I want to hear about. Yeah. Tell us about
It's like
that.
you start small, and then someone gets interested, and then they give you money, and then you get to put their name on the thing, and then more people come, and then people get fired up about the idea. Camp Wanatachi is about two girls who fall in love at Christian summer camp.
Okay, right.
And, the people got behind the music, they got behind the idea, and I just started to build a team of people around me who were willing to raise money for it.
Right.
And that we were headed to Broadway. That's what we wanted.
Right.
That's what we could have potentially gotten.
Yeah.
But I didn't. The producer at the time wanted me to sign a contract that I didn't want to sign. Okay. And said essentially, I'm stopping the bus if you don't sign this.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of people afterwards, so I stopped it. I was like, this isn't the only feather in my hat. I turn around and make this, huge business that's, bi-coastal, but, it's like, and then I'm doing this now. It's like, I don't know who you think I am, you think this is all I got.
Why? What were they trying to rope you into?
Well, the contract said that I could not be even a voice in the room when deciding casting or costumes or the director. Not that I have to be the number one vote.
Yeah, but it's
but
your
not
production.
even in the room.
That's completely
And I said, let's
you.
get this changed. And he's like, no.
Wow.
I've already spent so much money on you. I'm not spending more money on lawyers. And got to a point where he was just like, you sign it as it is right now, no changes, or I'm out.
Wow.
And I didn't.
Wow.
Because just didn't want it to.
I mean, that's so much. I mean, talk of, creative control. I mean, that's, basically just handing it over in a breadbasket.
Yeah, I just, and at the time, like, he was in lawsuits with other people he had done stuff with.
Yeah, you wonder, those hardball tactics, you wonder. But, I guess that's every...
Yeah, he's a wonderful man in so many ways. He believed in me when no one else did.
Yeah.
I just think that I was too poor at the time to have the kind of representation I needed to get it worked out expeditiously. And
well, it's a business, it was a business call. And,
and so right now I'm going to, I'm working with Zayden Marin.
Okay.
They produced Footloose.
Oh, wow.
They produced Chicago, which was a movie musical that won Best Picture, got an Academy Award.
Okay.
They did Hairspray with John Travolta.
Okay.
And, they are the movie musical people.
Right.
And they're the ones taking me to... we're going to pitch it to different big studios.
Okay, so then we're talking about possibly getting this as a
Camp
picture,
Wanatachi as a movie. And
as a movie.
It's like closer than it's ever has been.
Wow. So what's that process like?
Woo! It's pretty fun because one of the producers who was on the show with me at the time, she and I worked together again.
And when did this come out? I mean, it's been 8.
Yeah, I wrote the first song, Let's Ride Bareback, which it's so funny because apparently bareback means like having sex without a condom. I didn't know that. I wanted to ride bareback with
like a horse.
On a horse.
Well, I think that is the original.
Yeah.
But yes, of course, everybody's got a dirty mind.
And I wanted to do it in her, Let's Ride Bareback in your shortest skirts. And it's like, so it was sexual, but not the way everybody thought. And anyway, so I wrote that not long after having my first experience with a woman at Christian summer camp.
Right.
I just wrote it about her then.
Yeah.
And then in 2008, I put out the first song.
Okay.
And then workshopped it through 2011.
Okay.
Put it down. Tried to produce it myself at the New York Musical Festival in 2017.
Okay.
That was my first time producing it without the old production team.
I see. Okay.
And it was wonderful, but it was a lateral move.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think it was more just for to leave a taste in my mouth that I was more comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
We had people from HBO there and people talking about us going and doing stuff at the Majestic, or whatever Andrew Lloyd Webber's theater was in London. Like, there was plenty of buzz, but buzz doesn't mean, I've learned buzz doesn't mean anything. So now, all this time later, it's not beholden to anyone, which makes it a very attractive property.
Yeah. Right.
And I can work with, hopefully a team. I don't doubt that I'm going to have to compromise. I don't mind.
Yeah,
compromising.
Yes, and that's a good quality to have. It's just how much are you, how much and that's it. It's got to be.
And it had to do with my overall just trust level at that time.
Yeah. You should be the perfect person to work with because you're basically a one-stop shop. You did everything. And so, they don't have to deal with rights of the person that did the lyrics and then the music and then the choreography,
Right.
You're it.
Well, Camp Wanatachi, the beats were made by Travis Stewart.
Okay.
The guy who gave me my first sampler. He performs as machine drum. He's a very successful electronic musician and a great man.
Yeah.
And he did the beats for this. I could have written the whole show without him.
Yeah.
But it would have sounded like whatever I know how to play.
Yeah.
Which did not include Kanye West style production. Or we have genres from happy hardcore to diva house to one of the old songs, it's not in the show anymore, was very dubby.
Right.
I had no idea how to create those sounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just barely getting my beats to line up on my sampler.
Yeah, you were doing it the old school method. It's hard.
Exactly. So, so he, and then the third time we put it on, so Travis was with me from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then the third time we put it on, they were like, Natalie, you're so great, but you're wearing so many hats. Let's bring on this writer to help you.
Yeah.
And I said, I will let another woman into this project or another person in this project if it's Diablo Cody. Juno had just come out.
Ah, yes, I remember
and she's
that.
such a smart writer.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, they're saying she's the Diablo Cody of theater. And I went and saw one of her plays, and it was like an audition for my play. It had so many of the same themes. It was so funny.
Yeah.
Her name's Becca Brunstetter.
Mm-hmm.
She's gone on to be a writer and producer for Is This Us?
Mm-hmm.
And the current hit Made on Netflix.
Right.
So she's a very, very big writer now. And one of the reasons I know that her success and her talent is a huge reason Zayd and Marin are working with us.
Yeah.
They had already started a project with her. I think they were trying to do actually, I don't think I can say what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
But so that helps a lot. So the two of them were in it. And all these years later, I didn't have it copyrighted. People always like, do you have it copyrighted?
Oh my goodness.
I know. And I hadn't ever really needed it.
Right.
And then when it came time to copyright it, I could have just put myself as the sole author.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, I could still do the show like on a totally,
right.
Mediterranean, instrumentation or something.
Sure.
And I could take out everything Becca used, but they both worked so hard.
Yeah.
Especially Travis from the beginning.
Yeah.
That it is so astrologically important to me for them to get compensated if this gets big.
Good.
So it's in the copyright. It's me and Travis as the co-authors of the music.
Right.
I'm the only author of the lyrics, and me and Becca are co-authors of the libretto.
Wow. And tell us what a libretto is.
Libretto is like the talking part in in musicals they call it a book.
Okay.
And in operas they call it the libretto.
Okay.
It's just anytime you're talking.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. And so where and now we've got Borderland. Where could that go? And I just see with everything happening right now. It was almost perfect timing.
It's crazy. It's crazy how
in a bad way, but
I know
it's perfect timing.
So one of the big Ida Craddock in Borderland, her big mission was to help women be able to choose if they wanted to get pregnant.
Right.
She didn't deal with the subject of abortion at all.
Right.
But what she was trying to do was give women a legal way to prevent pregnancy. And at this time, you'd go to jail for trying to seek information on how to get a condom.
Really?
Because of Comstock.
Wow.
God forbid, you put what they called at the time a womb veil, just like a diaphragm, in the male.
Right.
You could be sentenced to hard labor, and
sure.
she was.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So her thing was, putting this concept in the show was extremely difficult. Her thing was borrowing from like tantric sex, the concept of male continence, which is you have sex to bond. You don't have to have sex just to make a baby, and the man does not ejaculate. He can still orgasm, and it takes some work.
Right.
But,
right.
And I even say that now in front of men, and they're like, it's not an easy sell, even at this day,
Sure, yeah.
Even with books like The Multi-Orgasmic Man and stuff like that.
Right.
It's very, and so she was, but at the time, so then it's like, why don't I withdraw? What about withdrawal then? Well, you could go to jail for that in Connecticut, for withdrawing. And it was considered a sin.
Wow.
So it's like, what can we do here? And that's what she was trying to teach people. And it's, Margaret Sanger's tack of giving, with the pill and that kind of stuff is a lot easier to sell.
Yeah.
Than like tell your husband,
Right.
But because she was so motivated to stop unwanted pregnancies because she saw the poverty it caused. She saw the children that resulted of these a lot of times went into lives of crime. And
yeah, it's still true today. I believe if you don't graduate college and if you have children before the age of 18 or 20, your chances of ending up in poverty are significantly higher.
It's just bonkers. And Bob, my husband, was telling me that I think it was some NPR show did a study about crime and why crime went down significantly in the 70s and has never come to those levels again.
Right.
And they basically put it together. That's when birth control became.
Right. I think that was in Freakonomics.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was in Freakonomics. Yeah.
So when her sex education pamphlets were getting intercepted, that was a violation of her right of free speech.
Right. Yeah.
And when and it's also because it was part of her spirituality.
Sure.
With like the tantra thing, like her idea of like how you're going to have great sex with your husband without ejaculating is if while you're both orgasming, you think about God and have lofty thoughts. And it was, I mean, it's such a hard sell unless you're a real spiritual person.
Right.
But that was her religion too.
Yeah.
So it violated her freedom of religion.
I see.
And,
okay.
you know, there were all these violations. So there's songs in the show that are like, you know, about church and state being separate and these kinds of things. And like the first song in the show is just such an anthem for right now. Yeah. That Roe versus Wade has been overturned. And, you know, it's not just that. Like it's also harder and harder to get birth control. Yeah. And it's just like, you know. So
what do you think she would think about today?
You know, I think if she was in a time machine and we took her here, take from her, you know, 1800s mindset, I think she would be appalled by Sex in the City. She, you know, wouldn't have, there's so many things. Like she didn't think that, you know, a condom was the best way because the condom broke between the magnetism between the couple. Right. But if she, same soul, same disposition, came up at this time, she would have been a total, you know, feminist and
firebrand
for all these issues that are now. It's like the same, like and there was a time when church didn't let gay people in because there was this, you know, thing that was interpreted in the time in the Bible as, you know, homosexuals are bad. Right. And then over time, the church, you know, some aspects, some parts of the church started to welcome them in. Sure. And so, you know, I have a lot of empathy for how ahead of her time she was.
She really was, my
you know,
God.
And so now that our rights are being taken away, it's a good time to do it. So you know, I came out of that like, whoo, like let's go with the show. Right. But then this movie thing is coming up.
I see.
And I also have to make money.
Yeah.
And I also have to spend a lot of time on my relationship with my husband.
Yes. So you can only do so many things.
I know. Yeah. And it's because I want it to be a good relationship. And that just means you got to hang out sometimes. Like, you know, Philip Glass's marriages, I don't think have gone too well.
Yeah. Right.
So
it's a good problem to have that you got a lot going on. You know, you're not bored.
So I'm working on the film now, and when I'm done with this push at the moment, which is to get the deck together. Yeah. We had a deck, and now that we're with these new producers, it has to be a better deck.
What do you mean by a deck?
So it's like there's like you get pictures and stuff about the show or telling you like for example, you can use the deck to tell the plot of it to people. Yeah. You know, instead of just, you know, if I showed somebody a video of a staged version, it wouldn't.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of I mean, a big thing I'm learning with the deck is that you don't want to fill in too many details. Like, if you
particularly if you're going from one medium to another.
Yeah. And you want the more details you give, the more reasons they have to say no. And it's like, so instead of saying she was standing there on a bridge with a rose and she saw him as he walked away, you say it was the most romantic moment of her life. and then the person listening can put their idea of what that means. And see their own vision within it. So, you know, it's trying to do that, but still tell them about the characters. So it's essentially like a slideshow. Yeah. And you talk with it.
It reminds me, my uncle was telling me about the difference between radio and TV. My great uncle has long since passed away, but he was saying that he found things so much scarier on the radio than he did on TV. And it's a similar concept in that what he would say is that somebody would describe something on the radio, and rather than the director's, producer's portrayal of what that scary thing looks like, you would imagine this crazy, scary thing yourself, and it was you allowed yourself to get freaked out by your own scary thoughts rather than somebody else's idea.
Oh my gosh! Like, think of if the only way you knew about January 6th was people telling you about it. Right. I mean, it was the video is enough to tell you it was horrific, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So So I've already applied for something that took me a long time for Borderland.
Yeah.
To take that to the next level,
Yeah.
which is essentially getting money to work on the music.
Yeah.
With a really cool group. The group is called Jack Quartet. They're like one of the most important string quartets around.
Right.
And they have been so smart about getting grants and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
They've got, I mean, if you look at who sponsored this thing I applied for, they have so much money given to them through these institutions that they can give people below them money.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, and so one of their things is like giving somebody an opportunity to work on a piece with a string quartet, going back and forth, collaborating.
Right.
And for me, when I don't have in my head exactly what things will sound like because I haven't grown up with a string quartet.
Right.
I don't play violin.
Right.
To have the humans in front of me would be amazing.
Yeah.
So I did apply for that. But my plan is after this deck is done to go right back to Borderland and apply for things.
Yeah.
And mix the music I have. Because what you heard was just a stereo mix off the board.
Okay.
But we do have them mixed we do have the stems.
Yeah.
Like just the percussion, just this. So I can mix it and make it sound even better.
Right. Okay.
So I'm going to mix a couple of songs and then try to send those out to everybody I can.
Right.
You know, and Joe McGinty, who played synthesizers, who used to be in the Psychedelic Furs.
Oh, wow.
You know, he's just a total icon. Briefly, the Ramones had a keyboard player.
Wow.
And
really?
it was him.
Wow.
There's like pictures of it. It's wild.
Yeah, that is weird. The Ramones with a keyboard
I
player.
know, in the 80s.
Wow. I mean, it was the 80s, though. I guess you kind of need to have a little
They're like, what can we do?
Yeah.
Anyway, so, and he's a great man and just a synth collector and
Right.
has been very supportive of my career.
Yeah.
He knows a lot of people too, and
Cool.
he loves the show, so
Yeah,
he's going to do
that's
whatever
great.
he can do there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not doing work to grow my DJ business.
Yeah.
I'm doing the work that comes to me so I can have money and, you know, once I pay everything back for this last show, Borderland, have money to put on something else of mine if I want.
Wow.
But my goal is not to grow the business.
Yeah.
I just need to make money so I can
Right.
do this other stuff.
That's a pretty cool gig, though, if you're, DJing as your so-called day job.
I
Not
know.
a bad gig. Most
I
people have got
know.
some day job. I don't know. I'm an accountant and I, DJ at night.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so blessed.
Yeah.
I'm
And it feels so weird to call it a day job because
'Cause
it's
it's
never,
at
it's
night. I
never
know.
a day job
I
for the
know.
most part. Yeah.
I know. Well, that is one of the things that's cool about developing. Okay, so you mentioned I have the business Baby DJ School.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
started with baby DJ classes.
Yep.
I wrote pedagogical house music and jungle music that taught kids, what it means to match beats and
Right.
what a jog wheel is on a controller.
Yeah.
And it's like you can teach them about more barn animals. But it's like, how does this kid really need to know so much about barn animals?
That's
like,
true,
if
yeah.
you go through the books, it's like, yeah, we know.
All
there's a
right, the sheep go by.
It's like, that's not
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
how sheep are. The sheep are like mass produced in these like torture factories. So anyway, and I was like, it's just as important for them to learn what a USB is.
Yeah.
And I think if it's taught to them with love
Yeah.
and positive intention, it's just as good. It's
Yeah.
just the information, having new information come in. So I treated that like a passion project
Right.
for years.
Yeah.
And in fact, I went to Amazon, Disney Junior, Netflix, all these places, and pitched a Baby DJ School TV show.
Wow.
DJ Natalie's Neighborhood,
Awesome.
where beats are hot and life is good. And we, and did that and pitched it to Sesame Workshop.
Wow. Okay.
And they hired someone to make the deck. I think that it cost, I don't know, something around. The number I have in my head right now is $30,000.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
For like a slideshow.
Yeah.
But they also made the logo and stuff like that. And I was just like, jeez, So that's just not my passion project at the moment.
Yeah.
But it's paying the bills and it's fun. But being a DJ makes my relationship with music a little weird.
How so?
Like, I'm sometimes just really, really tired of listening to music, and I get home and my husband wants to put on a record, and I just want silence.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a DJ to feel that way.
Yeah, no, but I mean, yes, you don't. I think maybe it's also getting older too. There's a wish for silence in some respects. I don't always need to have music on as much as I used to in that way. But I could just see it for you being so different because you're so used to making your own music, and you're a DJ. It's obviously it's all music, but you're playing somebody else's.
Yeah, and so much of it is acting.
Okay.
I play Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus at a party when they requested that song. Everybody goes crazy, and I'm smiling and jumping around like it's my favorite song. I hate that song. I'm so sick of Uptown Funk I could throw up. But, when they love it, I love it through them.
Yes.
But it's also exhausting, like, emotionally.
Yeah.
Because I reflect to them what I want them to feel.
Yeah.
And if I look and actually have, manipulated my own self to have the best time of my life.
It's hard.
They have the time of their life.
Right.
So it's, I put a lot into it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, there is a nice being able to DJ and see people be happy, but it takes a lot out of people when they're not being their true self, and that's what it is. I mean, you're acting, and when you've got to put yourself out that way, and whether it's trying to be happy or conforming to some office culture somewhere, it can be hard for people, and it's exhausting when you've got to you've played Uptown Funk for the 500th time.
I know, and I had this dream gig with these two celebrities, and I got COVID and I couldn't do it. So I was calling other people. All the main DJs in New York were booked.
Yeah.
And so I was starting to call other people who DJ on the side. And these are people, they won't DJ pop music. They don't do it. They won't do it.
Wow.
It's like,
that's also a luxury, though.
It is. It is. And, so, yeah.
Any songs you won't play? Favorite songs and songs you won't play?
Okay. Song I don't play, and this is sad because people love it, is Ignition. R. Kelly. It's the remix of Ignition, hot and fresh out the kitchen.
And
just
why?
because that documentary came out.
Oh, yeah. R. Kelly's, he's doing hard time, 30 years.
Really?
Yeah, 30 years, yeah.
But I was very affected by all the documentaries that came out about Michael Jackson and the revelations before it.
Yeah.
But it is such a cultural touchstone that I am unable to do my job without Michael Jackson.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Jackson, I feel like today he exists. It's beyond the person. It's just the music. There's Michael Jackson, the person, and then there's PYT. It's just
exactly.
For whatever reason, I don't think of, I don't know.
It's almost like the guys who wrote the Constitution, were slave owners. We're still taking that Constitution pretty seriously.
Yeah.
So it's separating the work from the author, and sometimes it's what is my job? I mean, I definitely don't play Michael Jackson as much as I used to.
Really? Okay.
But Thriller and Halloween is just...
I mean, you can't. There's just,
Yeah.
Yeah. Werewolves of London and Thriller. I mean, what would Halloween be?
Yeah, exactly. And Monster Mash.
Monster, of course. Yeah.
So, since I started this business that started with baby DJ classes, people started asking me, oh, you want to do a birthday party?
Right.
Sure, I'll do a birthday party. And then it bloomed into essentially a DJ agency geared towards families.
Yeah.
Children and families. And since I had that, there was so many families who had their kids had birthdays during the pandemic.
Right.
And I figured out how to do virtual parties.
Wow.
So I had work that whole time.
Wow, that's great.
I had I had to invest in some equipment, but
sure.
And then my friends who I always felt like were much cooler than me, who DJ all around the world, they don't have to play Uptown Funk.
Right.
They didn't have any work during the
wow.
pandemic.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I guess there is a...
Yeah, I mean, there's pluses and minuses
exactly.
too.
Exactly.
So do you bring most of the records, or you have a lot of that on iTunes?
I buy most of my music on iTunes.
Yeah.
It's just quickest. I buy all my music. I don't stream it.
Yeah, well, there's no way.
Yeah, I mean, it's unrunreliable for a professional
gig
unreliable. To stream it. And but when I teach, I still do private lessons for big kids.
Yeah.
The kids that that I feel like have the most potential, to
Big
be
kids?
honest.
What do you mean?
Big
by-
kids, like 6 is hardly a big kid, but 6 and up. They're not
Okay.
2 months old
Right,
like in baby
right,
DJ
right.
school.
Right.
So when the parents find out, not only do I have to buy this equipment, I have to buy every single song.
Oh, wow.
It's hard. And I was
Yeah.
like, you guys are so wealthy. Look around at your apartment in Tribeca.
Yeah, you
It's
could
just
spend
a
a few $100
thing
on a $1.29 iTunes
to
song.
support. And I start them off with a bunch of songs already.
Right, okay.
But anyway, so I buy all my music, most of it on iTunes because most of it is pop.
Yeah.
But for my radio show on Soho Radio,
So
I use records
Yeah.
and I buy lots of music on Bandcamp. And I
Okay.
buy lots of music. Have you been to the Folkways website?
Of course, yes.
Oh,
yes.
I love that about you.
Yes, yeah. They've got their whole catalog is up there. They're
I mean,
very
it's
good about it,
amazing. And I
yeah.
used to find those records in the records, like thrift stores and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
And then to be able to like go to their website, like I want to hear Argentinian protest music.
Yes, they've
Or
got.
like-
I mean, people. Most folks know it as folk music of the United States of the 50s and 60s era, but they've got everything. I mean, the entire world, whether it be in Central African Republic or
It's amazing, and it's just such a gift to humanity that
Yeah.
they've got it up there.
right.
It's not as easy to download and get music from Bandcamp and Folkways into my DJ set.
I see. Yeah.
iTunes is easier because you can buy like a bunch of songs at once, and they all are like iTunes is already integrated with my DJ software Tractor.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it takes a little more work, but it's worth it. It's worth it, obviously, to have good
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, I mean, when you're on the radio, you could basically do whatever you want. I mean, that's the the free form. That's the
Yeah, I
beauty
mean,
of
that's
it,
what's
yeah.
cool. I have a show on Soho Radio. Just look for DJ Natalie or Natalie Elizabeth Weiss is I think my DJ name on there. And yeah, I do world music. I do electronic dance music. I do like kind of some conceptual thing. And that's really great to be able to play my own, like kind of what I want to play.
It's a nice antidote to
The
doing
other stuff.
the pop stuff. Yeah.
But the real antidote is like a silent massage.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I put a lot of value on self-care.
Okay.
And I feel like during Borderland, I had to operate on such a high level
Yeah.
that I'd never eaten better. I've never slept better.
Really?
I was just like, all my supplements are just like out on the counter. And it's like,
Yeah.
if it didn't help me, like Diet Coke, I love it.
Right.
It doesn't help me at all.
No. Diet
If
Coke,
I need
no.
caffeine, I can have Sencha,
Sencha? What's that?
Oh, it's a type of green tea.
Okay.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so now since I'm working on this film, I thought the famous writer lady was going to pitch it, Becca Brunstetter.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to be the one who
I think you
says it.
should. Yeah, why not?
I mean, I wrote it, but sometime I don't know, but I think I'm going to because they want it to be underscored, and it's on Zoom.
Oh,
So
really?
to figure out the relative volume of she's on this Zoom here and I'm
great.
underscoring with music over here.
Right.
And neither of them have the other two women have the skill sets.
So where are you pitching? I mean, where are these people? I mean, are they all
Okay,
over?
so it's like Zayden Marin, they have contacts, like crazy contacts from years and years and years.
Yeah,
With all these studios. They have a first look deal, I think, with Universal.
I see. Okay, so we're talking folks out in Los Angeles for the
yeah,
most part. Okay.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
where in person I would have, like when I pitched to Netflix and stuff before the pandemic, I
Yeah.
flew out there.
Right,
And it was
right.
amazing and
Right.
terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, would you consider doing that again?
Of course.
Is it an option?
I would love to meet in person. All of us would.
Yeah.
And if it was in person, then I could underscore her.
Aha. I mean, could you ask? I always feel like meeting in person is so much better than doing. But what do I mean? What do I?
I mean,
know?
that we're all begging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe, but we're going to do it in September.
Okay.
So, well, that's our goal.
Yeah.
So I think there's something easier about doing Zooms.
Of course,
For
it's
them,
easier. Yes.
not for
them.
me.
Yes.
And this is like, it would be the biggest opportunity ever. So
Right.
I'll fly.
Yeah.
But it's also to do stuff that's underscored. It's like its own little musical.
Okay.
So Becca's super busy being like a famous writer.
What is underscoring?
Okay, underscoring is like music under the talking.
I see. Okay.
So,
Okay.
because if we were just going to play a song and we're like, if we're describing essentially what happens in the show and we
Yeah.
talk about the main songs in the show then we'll be like, and we start with our big opening number, The Spirit is Shining. And then we stop and we play them 20 seconds of The Spirit is Shining.
Right.
Well, on a Zoom, what are we going to run while we're playing that 20 seconds? Like a lyric slideshow? A little music video? We don't have enough time to make little videos for this.
Right. Okay.
And we have to think about what can we actually do with me and Bridget's schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of it, what we're telling them is like, there are these cool beats, trip hop. They don't know what trip hop is. So if I have this beat underneath it when I'm talking about them falling in love.
Gotcha. They can understand. Okay.
And so it's like I'm selling them on the story.
Right.
Because they're not hearing the vocals of the songs.
Interesting. Okay. Which they don't, to be honest, they don't, at that stage, they probably don't need.
Yeah, but it is a huge asset that I already have so much music written.
Yes.
Like when they were gonna do a prequel to Grease.
Okay.
When they were pitching that, they had one song.
Oh, wow. But it was also Grease, so it was in a box. But I mean, the prequel thing, to be honest, I think is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I would be extremely excited to see it.
Yeah.
Personally.
Well, you got that built-in audience. I mean, the same thing with all the prequels to Star Wars.
I mean, and I love all of those.
Yeah.
I mean, the pandemic gave me plenty of time to just be like, let's get real, guys. Let's do it in universe order.
Yeah.
I also just like it when anybody's into something.
Yeah.
That's why it was such a joy to be at your house. Because your music room, I just came home and was telling Bob all about it. It's just, and I saw so many CDs in there I wouldn't have expected.
Oh my! I still have CDs.
I mean,
you're dating me, Natalie.
No. I mean, lots of great music collectors have CDs.
Yeah.
People still buy CDs.
Yeah.
But and you had DVDs and you had records, and it was just so beautiful. And so I like it when anybody's into something.
Yeah.
So people are just so wild about Disney. I'm like,
Oh, God bless him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice for people. I like people that have passions,
Yeah.
whether it's Disney or quilting or whatever.
Exactly.
It definitely, says that this person has an interesting side to them, and there's some sort of fun nature about them, even if Disney isn't my thing or quilting.
Right,
or
exactly.
whatever it may be,
I don't get any joy out of looking down on people.
Yeah, well,
It's
that's
the
a good
same
quality.
thing. And if I did, I wouldn't have my job because I wouldn't be able to play. I'm like, you like Uptown Funk?
Right.
know?
Well, it's about the feel. I mean, that's what it is. It doesn't matter about the song. It's the feeling. I mean, that's what music has always been to me is there are, I don't know, kind of like jokey musicians or there's people who bring a guitar on stage, comedians. I can't stand it.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, I don't listen to music to laugh. For me, it's to smile. And they're very different feelings.
Or to groove. Like we were listening to that reggae dub stuff on the way back from the beach.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, this is so relaxing.
Yeah. What was Cool Down the Pace? I think it's not Dennis Brown. It was I'm forgetting now, but that's one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
And it's like the 10-minute version of Cool Down the Pace.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's very, very chill and perfect for a hot July.
And perfect for a hot July coming back from our super fun beach trip.
Well, that was the whole story of reggae. There was a period in, I guess it was 1 year, 64, 65, 66, where it had, thinking of Rocksteady, had a very, very fast beat. And it was an incredibly hot summer.
Oh, yeah.
So they cooled down the pace significantly, and that ushered in kind of the modern roots era, that it wasn't the very fast, Rocksteady or ska, and they slowed it down because people were sweating too much on the dance floor.
Oh, my gosh, how interesting.
Yeah.
I was trying to do a trip to Jamaica for my birthday.
Yeah.
And the real places that are like super exciting to go to for music stuff, a lot of them are in Kingston.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't interested in vacationing in Kingston as
much
as I
it's
was
not,
like
it's
the
a
beaches
city, it's
and
not,
stuff.
It's
Anyway, I didn't end up going there for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
But I love that music. I would just love to be with those big sound systems and I'm late to the game. I didn't find this about that stuff till I was like 25 or something.
Yeah. Well, it ain't going anywhere.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was in 12 years old, I knew all about ska. I knew about like original ska, next wave ska.
Ska. There was a thing in the '90s. I mean, it was the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. I mean, there were a lot of groups.
Cherry Popping Daddies, Squirrel Nut Zippers.
Yes, there was a whole. It was a revival for a certain stretch of time in the late '90s, and I remember that. I don't know where any of those bands are now, but.
Well, I feel like it's coming back.
I
saw someone skanking at a wedding the other night.
Wow.
And I got on the mic and I was like, I just want you to know I am here for any and all skanking. Thank you. There was also a whole Christian ska thing.
Really?
Okay. Really good bands.
Wow.
The OC Supertones.
Right.
One of my favorite punk bands was MXPX. My mom didn't let me listen to secular music.
Wow.
Unless it was like her Carole King record.
Right. Wow.
But if I went to a Christian music store, she'd let me get any music I wanted and as much. And there's actually quite a lot of great music.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and now, is that what I would probably want to be listening to? No. But at the time, it was like how I got to hear like those kind of drums. I had no other exposure to that. Yeah. So I'm very, very grateful for, those bands.
Christian hardcore bands.
Yeah, I would get mad at my mom and I would blast it. And she would be like, "What is this satanic music you're listening to?"
No, but they're saying Jesus.
I know, that's what I said. You bought this for me. I know.
I'm a big fan of black gospel, so I do listen to a lot of gospel. And,
oh, cool.
And I guess I do like ancient choral music as well.
Same.
From the I guess it's the 1500s. I don't
From
even
like
know.
what country?
Usually England.
Yeah.
The Tallis Scholars, Salisbury Cathedral Choir, all these ancient choirs that are performing, modern choirs that are performing
old
ancient
stuff. And a lot of times in the old places.
Yeah.
When I was in Greece, oh my God, okay. So Patmos is an island.
Okay.
Where the apostle, John, was in jail for being Christian.
Wow.
In Bible times. And he had his big revelation and wrote the book of Revelation there, and it took place at Patmos.
Right.
So there's a lot of like people who are interested in the apocalypse and are spiritualists. That's like a pilgrimage site.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
So there's this cave up there, and they say it's the cave where he was jailed and wrote this thing.
It's rocks.
It's rocks.
They've been around a billion years.
And they had these monks in there record their traditional old, music. And so I would say there's so much to uncover with like Greek music. And not to mention the bells. Like the bells on all the churches.
Right.
Like echoing off the mountains, but also just, bells.
Bells are cool.
Yeah. I have a wedding couple that, you know how you can run through like rice or something when you're getting married?
Right.
They're gonna run through like ribbons with bells on them.
Very cool.
Wow. I was like, oh, just a vibrating metallic body is like so spiritual on its own.
Got to ring the bell you could ring the bell a little too hard. And they're the first ones to do it, so they probably won't. Well, they'll be doing it before the reception, which is fine. You've had a bunch of drunk people ringing bells and cacophony.
Right. Totally. Yeah, so.
Can I tell you how I got into ancient choral music?
Please.
There was a modern art installation, and I think I saw it in Montreal, and I also saw it in New York City when it came through. It was called 40-part Nonette or something like that, and it was an empty room with 2 benches in the middle and 40 speakers.
Wow.
And each individual voice each speaker was one individual member of the choir. And it would play this 15-minute, I think it was a version by the Tallis Scholars, and it had them gabbing before they started recording. They were talking blah, blah, and then they started up. And so you could sit in the middle and hear all 40 voices. Or you could go up to each individual.
Pay attention to one more.
And hear one person.
Something like that gives you access that you can't, that's something that's cool about orchestras.
Yeah.
It's like, these instruments are on that side, these instruments are on that side. It's like a real old school panning situation.
Right.
But to have something like that where you
Yeah,
can
to have,
go
like,
up
I mean,
and your own free will and decide what you want to hear more of.
Yeah, I mean, imagine your house. You had 40 speakers, and you can listen. I'll listen to the French horn. I'll listen to the timpani. That's what.
Do you know what artist was behind it? Do you remember?
I don't. It was the song was Spem in Alium, and it was done by the Tallis Scholars. And I learned later that it was also featured in 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, good.
I mean, I guess it's good because it gets a whole new audience into it. But I was like, 50 Shades of Grey.
I mean, yeah, 50 Shades of Grey, like that Kate Bush song, Running Up That Hill, is really big right now because it's a Stranger Things.
Ah, right.
And I'm talking
shot
about
to number 1.
Every 10-year-old knows every word.
And that's from when? The 1990s?
Yeah, the 80s.
80s?
Hounds of Love.
Whoa, okay.
Kate Bush. And so when you're like, oh, because it was in Stranger Things, that's kind of a cool show. But when you're like, yeah, it was in 50 Shades of Grey.
No.
I mean, I got to tell you, I don't watch pornography, so I don't know what else is out there.
Yeah.
So when I saw 50 Shades of Grey, I was like, this is the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my life. But I think it's pretty cheesy, actually.
I read, I will confess, I read the book.
Good for you.
And it was the worst book I've ever read.
Oh my gosh.
100%. And I'm not saying because it was so bad.
What made it bad?
She would say, my inner goddess is doing somersaults.
Oh, gosh.
And they got the geography wrong. It was fan fiction for Twilight.
Right.
That's where it came from.
Really?
Yes, it was really bad. And Twilight is set up in Washington State, near the Aberdeen area, I believe. So it was, and she's from the UK. So her geography was completely, it was like it would be like us, thinking about Scotland,
right.
or Wales or something like that. The geography was completely off. The guy's a 26-year-old billionaire. And, so I've always wanted to read the big books and to see, why are a zillion people buying this Dan Brown novel? What was it? The Da Vinci Code. Mm-hmm. Da Vinci Code was awesome. I mean, a total page turner. I completely understand.
Have you seen the film?
I have not.
It's not good.
Yeah. Harry Potter, I read. I'm not a Harry Potter person, but I read, and maybe because I only read the first one, but I want to see what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm all about experiences. I'm like, let me check it out. And obviously they're easy reads, so you can read them pretty fast. It's not like reading, I don't know, Infinite Jest or something like that, where you have to devote months of your time. So yeah, I read 50 Shades of Grey, and it was the worst book I've ever written, or read. 100%.
I bought the third chapter. I bought it on the computer so I could watch it.
Wow.
It's a trilogy. I literally spent money on it.
So they made 3 movies?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. I mean, it was such a worldwide bestseller. But
yeah, it's also just something I could digest.
Oh my God. Talk about guilty pleasure.
Yeah. I don't know what my real guilty pleasures would be. I'll tell you a real guilty pleasure is I have the streaming TV.
Yeah.
There's oddly a TV shaped button on my remote, and I have Amazon TV, Fire, whatever. Yeah. And it comes with random TV stations.
Okay.
So you can just watch the Howdy Doody show or Baywatch anytime.
Oh.
There's a whole Baywatch channel.
Wow.
There's a whole channel of the Carol Burnett show.
Oh my God.
I know, it's so weird. And then you can watch the news from any city.
Wow, that's kind of cool.
I mean, it's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess that's not guilty because there's a coolness to it. But watching a lot of Baywatch in succession is kind of not that good for your brain,
Yeah, probably not. I mean, it's like Sirius Radio has, I don't know, you can listen to all Grateful Dead channel or whatever they've got, bands. But to have one show, the Carol Burnett show, I mean, that's kind of random from... speaking of guilty pleasures, though, we said we had to talk about UFOs. So.
Oh my God, I was like, am I going to have to bring it up, or is he going to bring it up?
So, and that was my thing during the pandemic. I watched The Office, which I love, but that was when it was still, I think, on Netflix at the time. But it's not. I think, you got to buy a subscription package to 80 different channels now. It's ridiculous. But, I saw, for me, I got into it having seen The Phenomenon.
Right.
And I think, was that... same for you? Or?
Your wife said, no, you know what? It wasn't her. It was a different friend.
Okay.
And she saw it, and she's like, if you watch it, you'll be like, oh, yeah, there's aliens.
Yeah.
And then that's the one that did the switch for me.
Yeah. And were you ever into sci-fi or...
I mean, I couldn't say I was into it like I'm into musical theater.
Yeah.
But I certainly watched a lot of X-Files.
Okay. I like the X-Files.
And I like movies about aliens. I mean, now I love them.
Yeah. I was never a Star Trek, Star Wars person. Just never
Not
cared.
Star Wars?
No, not at all. No. But then, growing up, I'd see something on Roswell. And speaking of it, this week is the exact 75th anniversary of the Roswell crash.
And it's like, I mean, when that thing came out in the New York Times, like, all right, here's some pictures.
Yeah.
They do have a whole, the story wasn't there's aliens. The story was our government has an alien studying program.
Yeah. And that's when I looked into it. And I think that article came out in 2017. It was written by, I think, Ralph Blumenthal, Leslie Kean.
Leslie Kean.
Yeah, who's great. She's really great. And Ralph Blumenthal, really great. I mean, Ralph Blumenthal is a Times lifer. A friend of mine who runs a podcast. Actually just had him on for a second time.
Is it a sci-fi podcast?
Yes, UFOs and afterlife experiences.
You have got to give me this because
Yeah.
I tried to find my own UFO podcasts.
Oh,
and
there's
they
quite a
weren't
few.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are better than others. Some of them require, a deep dive. But, seeing the phenomenon and seeing, you just get beat over the head. It's just like pilots and NASA astronauts and governors. And I read a review. It was Harry Reid, who was Senate Majority Leader, so who is the same position as Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer. So a huge person at the time. And he created, along with Daniel Inouye and Ted Stevens, this ATIP program, the Advanced Threat Aerospace. I forget what it stands for, but I looked into their backgrounds. So you had 3 bipartisan senators who created this back channel funding for this ATIP program. And I'm looking up their biographies. So Ted Stevens, the airport in Anchorage is named after him. So it's the international airport named after Ted Stevens. He was a World War II, I believe he was a pilot, but he was in World War II. He had seen Foo Fighters in planes in World War II. And Foo Fighters was what the service members called UFOs at that time.
Wait.
Yes.
At first I was like, he saw Foo Fighters? The band.
The band is named after.
Wait a second. The Foo Fighters is what they called UFOs?
Yes. During, and I think this was in Europe. And then the third person, Daniel Inouye, is a former senator from Hawaii who lost his arm in World War II. He received National Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor, and then the Medal of Honor, which is the highest military honor. And I think he's the only person that I could find that has received that. Guess who's named at the airport in Honolulu? Daniel Inouye.
Right.
His son is actually in a punk band, which is really interesting.
Oh, that is so cool.
But so, I mean, you have these, you can't invent people with better, reputations who are putting money aside because they feel like our government could be hiding something about UFOs. And so that said to me, there's something there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the rabbit hole with you. I mean, you could go so far into it.
I just think the things that, the thing where all of those atomic bombs were disabled.
Right, yes.
And then there was a thing where they appeared to those children in Africa.
The Ariel School, and there was a movie that came out about that.
Oh, I want to see that.
I haven't seen that yet, but
But they were talking through their minds, and it was something like, you're on the wrong path. You're going to destroy your Earth.
Right, yes.
And I was like, that sounds pretty much like what somebody from an outside area would say.
It's just so, But, in 1947, we just didn't know. I mean, now, you look at it 75 years later, and everybody says, the scientists say, yes, there is, the chance of there being extraterrestrial life is 1,000%. The Drake equation. But they've
Dude,
not...
all these cool things are named our artists. We got the Drake equation. Right. We got the Foo Fighters.
Right. Well, there'll be a lot more UFO-themed bands, I think, coming up.
Oh, cool.
So, I mean, now we know there are 10 billion stars in our galaxy.
What did you think of that picture?
Oh my God! And you have the James Webb Telescope, and they now think they found a planet that has water on it. So you have 10 billion planets in our galaxy. There are 10 billion galaxies in the universe. So that number is just like unfathomable. We cannot understand how big that number is. There are more planets in the universe than there are grains of sand on Earth. Took all the beaches, all the deserts, every single grain of sand. There are more planets than there are grains of sand on Earth. So the chances of there being an Earth-like planet are pretty high. So 10 billion times 10 billion, that number, let's say Earth is 1 in a trillion, the way that we were, so close to the sun and the perfect distance.
Mm-hmm.
If we're 1 in a trillion, that means there's 10 billion planets exactly like us in the universe. I mean, that's how unfathomably large this number is.
And it's just like, it seems like it would be more extraordinary for there just more like
more
for
extraordinary
there just to be one.
For it just to be us. Exactly.
I just the human centric, like, you can just edit this out if you don't want to talk about this, but like when I see these people, like, it's still, talking about abortion, and they're so like, it's human when it's an embryo, right? And like, and that's wrong. And it's like, if you care about life that much, why are you eating meat?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get why the human is just, especially when like apes can talk and sign language and all this.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't, if I had a militant vegan who was anti-abortionist, I'd like have more respect for them than these people who are just like on the right-wing train,
Right. There is, and I forget, there is a theory in environmentalism. Is it the Gaia theory that humans, that all life forms essentially are equal, and why are humans? I mean, if you think about us in the universe, we're the ants. We probably are the ants of the universe.
I know. And there are some movies that I feel like kind of help me understand that a bit more.
Yeah.
I think it was oh my God, is it Alien? I think it's. Have you seen the Alien series?
Is that with Jodie Foster?
No, that's with.
What's the one with aliens? Which one?
Aliens with that amazing girl who's also like the witch lady in Ghostbusters.
No, I don't know.
Anyway, I can't believe I'm not thinking of it now. There was some movie, and I think it was Aliens 3. It was something 3.
Yeah.
And it basically had. This is like the worst example to bring up because I can't remember any of it. I'll just tell you this. Science fiction films have been able to open up my mind to concepts that I couldn't have understood otherwise.
Yeah. I mean,
without seeing some kind of manifestation of it in illustrated.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's a level of creativity that's almost needed to be able to fathom other, I don't know, I'm saying culture, society, I don't know, beings, and, have to think. And there's a theoretical physicist out of City University of New York, Michio Kaku. I'm mispronouncing his name, but he talks about the possibility of civilizations that, what if they're 1,000 years ahead? What if they're 10,000 years? I mean, the universe is billions upon billions of years old, so there could be a civilization that's 1 million years advanced from us. And what have we done in the last 100 years? We went from horse and buggies to Tesla. So, I mean, computers, in 10, 30 years, we've got a supercomputer in our pocket compared to the, 1960s. So imagine what we would be 1 million years from now. So if there's some advanced civilization that came about 1 million years ahead of us.
And let's say they're not the assholes that humans turned out to be,
well,
who shoot themselves in the foot, and like we're not going to be around to advance as much as we would like if we destroy the Earth first.
There's no planet B, as folks like to say. So.
Yeah, I mean there kind of is.
You think? What's planet B?
Can't we live on the moon?
I guess we could.
I mean,
would you really want to move to the moon?
No, I don't want to move to the moon. No, I don't want to move to the moon.
See, I look at it as a good thing, thinking about if there are extraterrestrial civilizations that maybe would bring humans on this planet closer together in some strange way. Is that possible?
It seemed like that was the messaging I was getting from some. But the only thing I heard of aliens who weren't like that was that story where he was tortured. Okay. What do you think about that guy in that story?
I had thought they were conducting some sort of experiments on him. I mean, from what I remember, he was a logging crew. It was like 6 or 7 guys,
Yeah.
and they were in a pickup truck, and he stepped out, and somehow he was abducted. But they all saw it,
Right.
these other guys, and then 5 days later, he was transported back to this. But I don't think he remembers much.
Yeah, just
He
like
was-
flashes of something
Yeah,
bad.
I mean, he was there and then he was out, and then, but he mentioned different, I don't know, alien races. I mean, it's crazy, and who knows? I mean, it's just you don't know what to think of any of it. Where does it all logically? You know, it requires a bit of a leap of faith. Is okay. There are UFOs. The United States government has said there are unidentified flying objects. We have no idea what these things are.
Right.
Have they crashed on Earth? If they've crashed, have there been occupants?
Right.
If they've been seen since World War II, have they been seen since biblical times? And, other cultures going back. How far did... who knows?
There's this amazing story of a spirit, and I believe it's the book of Ezekiel.
Right.
And there's this spirit, and he was having... this prophet was looking at the spirit, and he said... And next to the spirit was like 2 concentric circles, like one circle running inside of itself.
Right.
And when the spirit went up, the circles went up.
Yeah.
And when the spirit went down, the circles went down. And I came to understand that was part of the being of the spirit.
Right.
And it's like, geez, what was he seeing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, there's a famous artwork with a UFO in it from the 1500s. It's a religious theme artwork. And, I don't know.
C.S. Lewis, who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, has an amazing science fiction trilogy.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, I think you would like it.
Yeah.
I don't totally know, but
Right.
they postulate that essentially that each planet
Yeah.
has what they call an Oyarsa, which is like a kind of spirit in charge of the planet.
Gotcha.
And they all talk to each other, which would be like essentially like an over angel. And that
okay.
like Venus, it's like there's a reason people associate Aphrodite and Venus with this planet because
Right.
it's actually true.
Okay, right, right.
And it's but ours is the guy who runs ours is what they call a bent Oyarsa. He's like fucked up.
Okay.
And which kind of goes with like the idea of like Satan being the ruler of this earth right
Wow.
now. Anyway, so I just feel like there's it makes me have more faith in like the unseen, just to hear about this stuff that's outside of our ordinary experience whatsoever.
I think so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's good to take yourself outside of, the day to day and, just to look up at the stars. I mean, just to be in a place,
How good can you see the stars in Ridgefield?
From where we are, not that great, but, that's what's so great about going to Cape Cod and being on a beach, the National Seashore. Or, to be honest, the best place I've ever been is outside of Big Bend National Park in Texas, a little town called Terlingua, and it's famous. It is so, so dark. There are no street lights, nothing. It is, desert, arid desert, and just to be able to, and it gives you a sense of self and of your own, humanity, and to be able to look up and, those stars are just light years away, and to say maybe the trivial stuff that upsets us or drives us crazy is not so important after all.
I wish that the knowledge of that could like remedy uncomfortable emotions for me.
Okay.
Like I wish if I'm upset that my husband thought I shouldn't buy something.
Yeah.
Like that's highway robbery. What are you doing? And
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
it's only $25. That's nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'm just like,
Yeah, yeah,
and then I don't want to feel that way.
yeah,
I don't want to ruin my day because
Yeah.
it's some bullshit.
yeah,
And so then like I just try to say, okay, focus on this other thing. Like think about how small you are in the that doesn't do anything for my emotional life.
yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
I have very, very big emotions. It's one of the reasons I write music and
Right.
shows, and I'm
Right.
attracted to, these dramatic characters like Ida Craddock.
Yeah.
But I'm getting a book called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy.
Okay.
It's like a bopping off, like, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the new something like that.
Okay, so
It's-
tell us about it.
Well, I don't know. I just bought the book, but
Oh,
but
all right.
but I think I have been told that like it'll help me. handle emotions that are bigger than are appropriate.
I see. Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of things, but apparently, but I had my therapist today, and it was just talking about like, please don't let anybody pathologize you out of your emotions, like, or out of having big emotions. Like, that's your superpower.
Right.
But it's like, it's only a superpower if you can turn it off.
True. I guess that is very true.
So I'm always trying to get more skills. One
of the things that I learned recently is called straw breathing. And, it's breathing, and, and I've read a lot of books on this, and, relaxation and breathing is always like, the top
thing, right?
I just wish in the moment, in the heat of the moment, I could remember to do that. So that's the hardest thing for me. And, sometimes I get heated myself, but I learned about straw breathing, where it's like you're breathing, and it's that deep breath in and out, but like you're sipping, not that you're sipping, but you have a straw in your mouth. So you're just breathing through this very narrow, cylinder, the in and the out. And that's supposed to be,
well, probably because it slows you down.
Yeah, it slows you down, but it's a way that it's channeling your breathing to make it different than just your ordinary deep breaths.
Oh yeah, and I think that's one of the things that smoking is like. Your breath becomes
You're right.
more of a focus.
You're right. If you think about what's a cigarette?
Yeah.
It's the same size as a straw.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and that's why like there's a value to smoking things that don't have nicotine in them.
Yeah, well.
And yeah. So yeah.
So it is a superpower having to be able to channel those emotions. Maybe that's what it is. And maybe it just says, but you can't always do something creative. It's not the solution to every problem.
Exactly. And it's like there's a heck of a lot of like discipline and like budgets and stuff like that it's not like an immediate release.
Yeah.
It's the vision of it that gives you the mini release each time you envision it.
Yeah.
So, like, I could imagine, this stuff happening way before it happened, and I get kind of the gift of it existing then.
Yeah. So we talked about Camp Wantanachi and Borderland.
Wanatachi.
I knew I was gonna.
I want to touch you.
There you go. All right.
Camp Wanatachi.
Wanatachi. So, what's beyond that? What are you thinking? What's next? What do you have projects that are kind of stewing about in your brain?
Let me think. Oh, yeah. The Beaver Simone.
The Beaver Simone.
Yeah, a misunderstood beaver from Wyoming finds a pair of magical sunglasses that make her cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she had like a really big tail, and her mom like gave her tail braces, so she was always like dragging this like cage behind her, and everybody thought she couldn't build a dam, which is like the main beaver task.
Yeah, you gotta be able to do that.
But then she essentially becomes like a pop star.
Wow.
And in like a human world, you know how Alvin and the Chipmunks just like interface with humans?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
And of course, they love her big tail here.
Right.
It's a very good time for big tails.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I pitched that to Blue Sky Animation.
Yeah.
They did the Ice Age series.
Okay.
And I wrote a cool song, and didn't happen.
Okay.
But, that's a story I feel like I have at the ready.
Wow.
But not necessarily what I want to do next.
Yeah.
I'm interested in scale.
Okay.
I just recently saw The Last Emperor.
Okay.
And it takes place in China. It was the only people they ever let film in the Forbidden City.
Right.
And basically they had all these people bowing and standing up and doing this stuff in this huge place. And there was just the amount of people.
Yeah.
The scale was so large. And it was an Italian director.
Yeah.
But like all about China.
Right.
And the scale of like I'm already pushing myself out of the world I know to write something about a different century.
Wow.
But to have it be such a totally, completely different culture and have to know it inside out and be able to have something. I'm interested in doing something larger.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's what gets me excited.
Wow. All right. Well, how could people find out more about you? And
yeah, djnatalie.com.
Okay.
Can tell you all about all the different things I do.
Good.
And I should have a link to Soho Radio on there. I will.
Yeah. Well, there you go. All right.
Oh my God, this was so fun.
Awesome.
Woo!
High five.
Thank